You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to us trekking through the Twilight Zone. If you've got a wish to make, now is the episode to tell us. We are still going to be talking about The Man in the Bottle, and I'm not going to dither around. Julian, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, this is another not great episode. I like this better than the previous episode, but it's okay. It's a sort of like genie episode. I have some quibbles. It's structured fine. It's a decent idea for a story. I think most of it works. I like the neighborhood thing and the antique shop and all of that. I mean, that's clever. It works for the most part, but there's some weirdness here. What about you?
Yeah, I have questions about the American taxation system.
Yeah,
we will get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, generally, these sort of genie things, because this has become a cliche, a bit of a trope. Like most series will have the genie, and again, it comes into that thing of like you have to be insanely specific about what it is you wish for because it will be twisted in some way. But generally, I do kind of like these because I always find it interesting to see how they're going to get undone and that sort of thing. But also it's interesting how this one starts. I like how this comes about because I didn't know where this was going. Like it was called The Man in the Bottle. I was like, okay, this could be anything. Like it could. At one point I was convinced this was going to be about literally like a miniature person, like a Tom Thumb kind of character, like in a bottle. But this episode starts with an old woman, and she's obviously destitute, and she's looking to sort of make an income. And she brings in this wine bottle, this sort of like this decanter kind of thing, and she sort of says, "Oh, it's a family heirloom. It's a family heirloom." And the guy's like, "No. This is clearly something like it's worthless." But you see that he's got like not, but a little bit begrudgingly because he's not doing particularly well. Like he gives her some money and helps her out. But then you find that she just found it in the trash. She admits that she found it in the rubbish, but then it turns out that this bottle actually contains a genie, and I kind of like it that even the genie is like, yeah, I get sort of passed from owner to owner, and the fact that it was found in the trash and it ends up in the trash sort of says to you that this doesn't. I'm going to guess that this doesn't go well ever.
Yes, I agree with that, and I dig that, and I dig the idea that. Obviously, like the antiques dealer, whether it's like Needful Things or whatever, I mean, is prime real estate for odd objects.
Yes.
I mean, you could do who knows? Somebody could just walk into an antiques dealer with the Ark of the Covenant, any day now. I mean, it's such a great fertile ground for these kinds of stories. And while you're right, it's a kind of trope, it's a kind of cliche. We've seen how the Twilight Zone deals with a guy who can't die, who's made a deal with death and, making a deal with the devil to get what you want. This is another one of those. And I think at their worst, they're still sort of interesting.
Yeah. No, I find this interesting. I found this one interesting. Like, it was entertaining. I like the way I like the fact it's 4 wishes, and not 3, which, they clearly sort of have the structure that they've got to hit. They're like, okay, well, we've got these 4 sort of scenarios that we've got to sort of adhere to. So 3 isn't enough. But the monkey paw, the sort of the story of the monkey's paw. Like, anytime you get these wishes, that's got 4 in it. I think, or maybe it's 3. It has this idea of sort of like it's going to go wrong. But I like them. They start simple. They're just like fix that pane of glass.
Yeah.
And
And I mean, the genie could just say, let me give you a demonstration, right?
Yes.
And then it's 3 wishes. I mean, I would like it better if it were 3 wishes, but I do like this sort of idea. The first wish is a demonstration, right? It's the build up.
Yeah, and it is. It's them testing the waters because again, it's a man and a wife, and I like the fact that it's interesting how they obviously, like they say power corrupts or money corrupts or whatever, but it doesn't quite. But the wife is very cautious. She's like, no, 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 no. This, I don't like this. Like, this is, this is almost like ungodly. Like, let's get this out of here. But he wins her over by fixing a pane of glass in one of their display cases, and then she's like, "All right, like, let's see what we can do."
Yeah, I like the wife. She's sort of the character who's like, no, this is a deal with the devil. It's not going to go well. I know these stories, or I'm just suspicious. He's too slick. Nothing good's going to come of this.
Yeah, and so I like her caution. It's quite funny because often you get, we've said before that they have the trope of the Twilight Zone is often like the shrewish wife, the nagging wife. This is one where I'm like, no, I'm sort of on your side. Like, I've seen these stories. Like, no, this is not going to end well, and this really you shouldn't play around with this. But the second wish they make is this: they wish for $1 million. And to remember, this was in 1960. So, like, if you wouldn't wish for $1 million today. You'd be just like, or 100 million or whatever. Like
$1 billion.
Yeah, it feels like that, like $1 million, and it basically sort of like rains down cash, in notes, and then like I say, the first thing to do is make donations to people in the neighborhood. Like, it's not like them going, right, we're off. This is us now. It doesn't become like a hoarding thing. Like it does. They give away like some of the money straight away. And as you said, it sort of taps into that community thing, which I thought was really cool. Like, it's sort of.
Yeah, and it follows up on that beginning with the old woman who he takes pity on and buys the bottle for $1. So and this is that sense of neighborhood that I find missing, and I find quite charming in these episodes.
Yeah, I agree. But the thing I'm interested about is often in these things, like, you have like a villain. Like, the genie is either a villain, like a blatant villain, or you have the person making the wish is selfish or corrupted, and then they're being punished by making these wishes. And it doesn't seem like either in this. So this is a little bizarre. I don't know.
I quite like that. I mean, my complaint about these stories is, the genie is a little mischievous, but he's not out and out evil. These are good people. I like that they give the money away. But I rather like that there isn't an obvious villain. Nobody's twirling mustaches. Nobody's like, make me ruler of the planet. Everyone has to obey my voice from now on. There's none of that stuff.
No, and that's fine. But then, the outcome at the end of this feels like a punishment kind of thing. So it does feel like there's, because so basically when they win the $1 million, or they wish for the $1 million, they gift them away, and then they do make plans to go away. But then a taxman turns up
instantly.
Yeah, and I'm like, the only person that could have told him is the genie.
Yes. Or I guess one of the people from the neighborhood, like, thanks for these 2 wads of cash. I'm going to rat you out to the IRS within minutes.
Yeah. And then the taxman comes and says, right, so what's that? You've got $1 million there. Let me just make some calculations. Beep, boop, beep, beep, boop. That's $900 and something thousand that you owe the tax office.
Not in America, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have the things that irritate me about the $1 million wish. First of all, $1 million, he specifies in like 5s and 10s. $1 million would fill that room, you know? Yeah. I know that's such a minor quibble, but I'm always irritated when it's like, we're stealing $1 million. Yeah, it's in a duffel bag. Yeah, $1 million weighs down an armored truck. But, minor thing. But yeah, that tax thing, it almost feels like, was this scripted by like a libertarian or something? Because this is not how it works. The IRS does not instantly show up and demand. Also, it doesn't demand its money instantly. This is not the way it works. You have a tax bill due in a certain amount of time, and you're smart if you remit money ahead of time, so you're not paying interest come tax day. But the rate of taxes is almost 95%.
Yeah.
This was never the case, and even when we had a 90% bracket, that was a marginal bracket over and above, like, 500,000, 600,000, or what. I mean, this is absurd.
Well, this is like the Republican nightmare, isn't it? This is exactly. This is what they all think Bernie Sanders wants. This is basically what they think is going to happen. Like you get a windfall, and someone from the IRS is going to turn up and be like, "Thank you very much. That's mine now."
Yes, exactly. And I'm going to go squander it on, therapy for lesbians or something,
Yeah.
which is the government just can't wait to give people other than white men money is the part of the dream, the nightmare of these Republicans.
Yeah. So but it is funny that I say that they have to then, and they end up with this $5, and then he says, well, if you can't have money, power is the next thing, and so he makes this very sort of specific wish of, I want to be the ruler of a foreign country, and that can't be
in the 20th century.
In the 20th century, that can't be voted down to power, because he's like, oh, I don't want I don't want to be sent back in time. He says, like, I don't want to become, the ruler of like a medieval kingdom or something. Mm-hmm. So he he tries to specify it, and he says this thing can't be disposed out of power, and then the wish takes place, and it transfers him to, and the first you don't see, you see there's someone with a head on the desk, and a Nazi soldier walks in, and it turns out they've turned him into Hitler, but not Hitler like at the start of the war. Nope. They've turned him into this Hitler literally as the bunker is being invaded.
Yeah, I mean, and the Nazi soldier is there to give him the poison that he's going to take. And it's like, oh yeah, we got the soldiers with the gasoline ready to burn your bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, so Ava's out there ready, whenever you're ready, take your time, compose yourself. It's really, but this is that thing about punishment that I'm like, I don't know, what this is. Again, like, was this, is this, you say mischievous? This is a little bit more than mischievous. Like, is he going to sort of, because if he doesn't take the poison, does he change the course of history? Does, does he like, well, I can't, so he gets taken to The Hague and then has to go to the trials. Like, I don't know. It's all very,
can't he just like write a note that says, I was wrong about everything? Nobody following my footsteps.
Yeah, this was all a very bad. I
made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, this all got out of hand. It started as a dare. It really it snowballed. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know. It just I get it, because it's quite, when he turns around and he's Hitler and he says, like, I'm Hitler. Like, it's played a little for laughs, because it's supposed to be sort of like, oh, even this wish has gone awry. It still feels like a punishment, and I don't know what he's being punished for.
It doesn't feel like a punishment to me. I mean, I do. My complaint is always these people should be more specific. And even though he tries to be specific, it seems so obvious the holes that he's leaving open, And so that's always a complaint that I have with these stories. But interestingly, this actor had played Hitler previously, and so apparently it's like, we got him. Let's go for the Hitler thing. But the Hitler thing, it strikes me as, like it could obviously, it is kind of in bad taste, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still sort of surprising and charming, and it's not belabored. I do think it's sort of the, a highlight of the episode. It's fun, even if it's not especially insightful. To me, it just comes off as a bit of comedy and a bit of like, aha, he's Hitler, and he's got to wish it away, rather than, it being punished.
How does this play 15 years after the war? Because we're talking about this 60 years after the war. So again, like, there's that thing of like, usually it's comedy, and I think that's sort of the point, isn't it? But like, we're watching this and going, oh yeah, it's Hitler, it's a Nazi thing. Like, we know this is a warning from history, but 15 years later, like, in 2015, were there sort of like Bin Laden jokes, or I don't know. It's sort of,
no, I mean there were, and I mean, I think in some sense it was safer to do this in 1960 than today. And I think rightly so. I mean, in 1960 we didn't have a Nazi president yet. Not a
true.
joke. I mean, in 1960 it would have been unthinkable to think that you would have somebody who would say, to a neo-Nazi group, stand by, and
Yeah.
I mean,
They're good. There are good people on both sides. That's what you have to
exactly.
remember.
I mean, if somebody said that would ever happen in 1960, you would have, every single American would have thought, that's gonzo.
Yeah.
So in some sense, like 15 years is kind of like a good, I think post 10 years is a good period where you can kind of start joking about 9/11. A little bit cautiously. You can start joking about Hitler. I mean, at this point, the U.S. isn't as allied with Israel, but I mean, Israel exists. We're over the the Nuremberg trials and all of that, and this is all sort of like in the past. It's a couple wars ago, certainly Korean War, and it feels safe to you look at the producers, right? I mean, you couldn't make the producers new now. Springtime for Hitler,
It's very true.
like, but you could back then.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Oh, it just struck me as curious, but it does play for comedy, and I think it kind of works. But he resolves that he wants to be taken back, and that's their 4 wishes. So the 4 wishes resolve everything, and the little sort of like the cherry on top is actually quite a good little moment. It made me laugh. Was they've obviously fixed that window, and they said, well, at least we've come out on top. Compared to where we were, we've come out on top. Here, that window's been fixed. And then as he gets up, he's
$5 left over.
And we've got $5, yeah. And then he stands up and cracks the broom into it when he's trying to, because they've dropped the glass bottle, cracks the broom into it. So now you're like, okay, well the window's broken, and you're probably gonna have to use the $5 to fix the glass. Yeah. So you're probably back to square one. So, it's interesting, and it ends up in the trash again, and for somebody else to pick up. So it's an interesting little episode. It sort of works for me. It's fun. It's not hard hitting or deep or anything. It doesn't have any major themes, but it made me chuckle in a couple of places.
Yeah, same here. And I think, sort of to offer my final thoughts, I think it's very similar to sort of like the Death episode, where here's this riff on a familiar trope. The ending works for me, and that's why I don't feel like it's punishment. I mean, I feel like they're back to square one, and it ends, if it has a message, it ends with sort of like, appreciate what you have. You really have it's a wonderful life ending, right?
Yeah.
Having this antique shop with your wife, they clearly love each other. I don't know how often they have sex, but they're clearly, in love with each other. They still like each other. Thank God for and and so we're struggling financially, but he doesn't seem to feel like the antique shop is a burden like he did at the beginning of the episode. And it's that sort of appreciate what you have. Don't go for the mansion or Hitler or $1 million.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It is that there's definitely like an uplift at the end, which is fun. It's a fun episode. It's sort of it's quite light and it has some levity. So I kind of enjoyed this episode. It's not hard hitting, but it is good fun. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there we go. So that was your little podcast in a bottle. I hope you enjoyed that. And thank you as always for your support and your donations. And we shall talk to you on the next episode.